The primetime schedule, Grant, for the 49ers in 2024 is basically out. You've got week 1, the Jets, we knew. That's Monday Night Football. Week 6 in Seattle on Thursday Night Football. Okay, great. Week 8 against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, just like last year. We know how that went. Week 13 in Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. Week 15 against the Rams on Thursday. Again, remember, you can play 2 Thursday Night Football games now. And week 17 against the Lions will be Monday Night Football, according to at Nerdington NFL.
At Nerdington NFL. Good to know. Well, I mean, if all teams are perfectly healthy, I'm looking at maybe 2 losses. How many losses are you looking at there? I'm looking at 2 that I would pick as losses, even if teams are fully healthy.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say maybe 3. If you can get out of that with 2 losses in the primetime games, I would sign for that right now. Absolutely.
Which 2 are the losses?
I would have said Buffalo, but they have lost a lot of talent this offseason. I know Josh Allen is really good. I could see Aaron Rodgers and the Jets beating the 49ers in week 1. Full strength Aaron Rodgers, right? That Jets defense is really good. I'm fascinated to see the Sauce Gardner-Brandon Ayuk matchup. Like, specifically, if Ayuk hasn't been paid, it's like, oh, you can get away from man coverage. You want to be at number 1? Go kick Sauce Gardner's ass in a primetime game on Monday Night Football. Like, I think the Jets are a bad matchup for the 49ers. I could see them losing that game. I think San Francisco will beat the Seahawks. I think they'll beat the Cowboys. I think they'll beat the Rams. I would say they'll probably lose to, I guess, Buffalo. Week 17 against the Lions, I don't know. That could be meaningless, that game. We don't know.
Could be. Although probably week 18 would be the meaningless one. But yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, they could sweep those games if they're healthy. But I guess that's kind of the theme today with the 49ers. Like, yeah, the way I look at it with them is they won 12 games last year. They didn't get better this offseason, but the schedule got tougher. So, and their core got older, and it's already a relatively old core by NFL standards. So, yes, on paper, you can make arguments for why they should win or why they should be favored in every single game this season. But it's going to be an interesting season. It's a tougher schedule for sure.
It's a crazy schedule. Like, there are games that are not even on this list that could be primetime games. Like 49ers Chiefs is not a primetime game. Now they put it on Sunday afternoon, which is like a sort of de facto primetime game. It's kind of like the standalone game in the afternoon window. But like, that could have been primetime. There are so many juicy games on the 49ers schedule. 49ers Packers is not a primetime game. So their schedule this year is very difficult. But I disagree with the idea that the Mariners, excuse me, not have gotten better this offseason. Sorry, I got spaceball in the brain sometimes. Brock may get better this offseason. And even if you have some personnel losses, if your quarterback gets better, that may be enough to compensate. Good
point. That's a really good point. I'm saying, yeah, that's a great point. Save that. They didn't get better. Now, what the Niners would say is they didn't get much worse, and they were already really good. Sure, but the division got better. The conference got better. The schedule got tougher, and they won 12 games last year. So that means 5 losses. How many losses are they going to have this year before the schedule comes out and we can see like which are the tough weeks or when they have like back-to-back East Coast games, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So maybe scheduled losses. Just looking at the opponents, I feel like I don't think they're going to sweep the division this season. Let's start there. Are they going to sweep the division this season? I don't think so.
I try to be, when I'm doing these, especially because I like to bet the over-unders, the win totals for the year, I like to be as conservative as possible.
Sure.
So I'm going to say they split the games against the Rams. They split the games against the Seahawks. I think they'll still beat Arizona twice.
That's interesting. I'm actually going to lean towards them splitting with Arizona and beating Seattle twice, simply because of the quarterbacks. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is really good, but there's no evidence of that yet. But that's where I'm leaning.
I will say, and I said this last year too, like the Cardinals don't have a train wreck as a coach. Like Cliff Kingsbury didn't know what the hell he was doing. Jonathan Gannon is not an idiot as a head coach. So the Cardinals games are going to feel a little different. I still Kyler Murray can still beat you because he's still athletically a freak, but I'm so down on him. Like the fact that they had to put the homework clause in the contract has just skewed my perception of him so much that I don't know. I'm still down.
That's fair. I'm wondering, he kind of strikes me as similar to Baker Mayfield, who didn't seem so focused on his career early on and then got humbled. And last year seemed like he was kind of the mature veteran that he needed to be. And I wonder if Kyler can do that too, since he's kind of gotten written off by this point too. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing that the Cardinals take a game from the Niners this year, but I think they certainly could. So that's 2 potential losses. And then the rest of their schedule, I mean, they got the Chiefs, they got the Bills, they got the Lions, they got the Packers. Like those are 6 real tough games right there that you could conceivably, pick as losses right now for the 49ers and say, this is a really good team that could go 11-6 this year, or worse, depending on Trent Williams and Debo. I think that's a big question with the 49ers. Like, we're not really worried. McCaffrey's played a full season. Ayuk, Kittle, Purdy. What about Trent Williams and Debo? Because they don't play full seasons. They just don't. So the question is, how many games are they going to miss? How many?
I think that was part of the Pearsall pick was we know Debo's not going to be here. By the way, Last Second Sports says Bills in mid-December, not easy. Yeah, I don't love that. Would have liked to play them early in the year. Ant-Man Felix, YouTube channel member, says A-Rod ain't beating San Francisco. Here's the thing. In the regular season, Aaron Rodgers is 6-3 against the 49ers. So he does beat them in the regular season. Now, I know in the playoffs he's 0-4, and that's fair. But in the regular season, and the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers, which was, I believe, on a Monday night, he drove down the field at the end of the game and beat the 49ers. In fact, he hasn't lost in a Monday Night Football game in a decade.
Interesting. And what was interesting about that game, it was DeMeco Ryans, I believe, 3rd game as defensive coordinator. And he took a lot of heat after that game. How come you let Aaron Rodgers go down the field in 20 seconds? Like, how did that happen? Is he really ready to be a defensive coordinator on a team with Super Bowl aspirations? He improved so quickly, and now he's a really, really good coach. But this will be Nick Sorensen's first game as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. He's going against Aaron Rodgers. How's that going to go?
Yeah.
Good call.
We fired DeMeco Ryans after the first drive of every game, I felt like, because the other team would go down the field and get points, and people would be like, rah, rah, DeMeco Ryans, and then they wouldn't score like the rest of the game. Everybody would forget about it. Yeah,
he was so good. He was like a boxer who sort of sizes you up in the first round, almost concedes the round, and then just destroys you the rest of the fight.
So I forgot that they had changed the rule. So on today's 49ers in 5, I apologize. I misspoke. I said 5 was the maximum primetime games you can have. That's not true, because now they're letting you play an extra Thursday night game. You can have more than 5. So I was wrong about that. I just wanted to correct that on the record. Last year, the Niners had the biggest rest disparity of any team in the NFL by a lot. It wasn't even close. And they still got to the Super Bowl, which is a credit to them. But I want to see this year, what is the rest disparity situation like? Because I kind of feel like the NFL, they kind of owe them a little bit. And right away, week 1, Monday Night Football, week 2, short week. Like, damn it. Here we go again.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. They also have like the 5th most travel miles. Is that correct? That's what I've read.
I haven't seen that part of it yet.
Yeah, it's 5th most travel miles. And it just seems like you're always going to be in the top 5 if you play out here on the West Coast, because all those trips are so far. Even Denver's far from here.
Last year they had
travel miles.
What is that?
Yeah. 5th most travel miles. I'm trying to get it for you. So we got the Chargers with the most, then the Dolphins, then the Seahawks, and the Patriots, and the Niners, then the Rams, then the Raiders this year. Total mileage is almost 25,000 miles.
Last year, the Niners had the 2nd most. The Seahawks had the most. The Niners were at 2nd most. They had the 2nd most travel miles last year, and the biggest rest disparity last year, and still finished with the number 1 seed, and still got to the Super Bowl. It was an incredible year last year.
You know what's big news for the Niners? What? No London trip.
Yes. Why is that such a big deal?
I mean, who needed more travel on top of what they already have? Like, they already are 5th most. They're already at like 25,000 miles nearly. Add on another. No, I'm sure they were real happy they don't have to go to London.
I don't like when they go international. Football players, athletes in general, are creatures of habit. I feel like that's a big disruption. I don't like it. Clickbait
Mexico City one was fun. I'll say if you're going to go anywhere, go to Mexico City. There's actual Niner fans there. It was a lot of fun.
Clickbait Motorsports says Brock Purdy can barely handle water falling down from the sky. Now imagine snow in the cold weather of Buffalo. I don't know how Brock plays in the cold. He hasn't really had to face like one of those like Lambeau,
Like Tua has.
like the Colin Kaepernick. Remember when Kaepernick went to Lambeau and went sleeveless and won the game? Like, we haven't seen Brock in the cold. He doesn't do well in the rain. I don't know how he does in the cold. I don't know how many cold weather games he played at in Iowa State.
It'd be nice to find out. I would imagine he played in a few. It seems like, I don't know a whole lot about Iowa out there, but it seems like they got cold and they got corn. So I think he should be prepared.
I don't know how many corn games Brock Purdy has played in. Jesse Naylor's back says 9 home games is good. Let's see if they have an early bye. Yeah, that's the other part of the schedule that I feel like is important, especially for this team. I mean, they were crawling towards bye weeks last year. Like, they couldn't wait to get to, they were desperate for a bye week because they were so tired. Let's say this year when it is.
I mean, if Trent and Debo play 17 games each, this team could win 14, 15 games. If those guys miss 5 games each, this team could go 9-8. I think it so much depends on those two guys. And I guess to your point, that's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall. Would have been nice if they had drafted an offensive tackle too, just in case. But you know what? It's cool because they got Chris Hubbard and Jalen Moore.
Jalen Moore, yeah. John Lynch talking up Jalen Moore in the presser was like, my God.
It's all good.
Richard Stanway, YouTube channel member, says, Rob, say hello to Richard and Joe from the UK. Big fans of the show. Listen every day. One of the best days of my life was visiting Levi's in December of 2022, especially when Jimmy had to be replaced by Brock. Wow, man.
Yeah, I remember that.
One of the best days of my life was going to Levi's last year. I was at that Cowboys game. It was my first 49ers game, my first NFL game. It was electric at Levi's. It was a beatdown, and I hope it repeats this year.
This day is an important day in 49ers franchise history. It's the day that Brock Purdy took the job from Jimmy Garoppolo and then asserted himself as the franchise quarterback. What's interesting about this day, if you go back and look, first thing in the morning, Ian Rappaport comes out with a report. Do you remember what it was?
No.
Before the game, that the Niners have been so impressed with Jimmy Garoppolo that they are considering giving him an extension.
Oh,
look it up. Look it up. That happened that day. But of course, they knew that Brock was better than him. They knew it.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a 49er fan out there that doesn't acknowledge the absolute luck of this whole situation, like, you're just not objectively looking at the reality. Brock Purdy never sees the light of day if 2 quarterbacks in front of him don't get hurt. We have to acknowledge that.
Yeah. So, hey, it's a good story.
You know what? I'm never rooting for anyone to get hurt, but I am grateful that by some way Brock Purdy got to play, because clearly he has been the best quarterback Kyle has ever had in San Francisco.
Well, Jimmy was sort of like always. I mean, he was an injury waiting to happen. But here's my question. Let's say he doesn't get injured that day against the Dolphins and he makes it through the season and the Niners give him that extension, would he still be playing for them right now? Like, we saw he crashed and burned with the Raiders, but it seemed like the Niners always propped him up pretty well. I guess we don't have to. We'll never know. We'll never know. We'll never know.
If they kept winning, that's the thing. It seemed like it
they
didn't
won
matter
with him.
To Jimmy. Yeah. If they won, he was fine. And they seemed to, I mean, they won a lot of the games that he friggin' played in despite him. So he might be. I know that Jimmy thinks if he didn't tear his ACL, he'd still be in San Francisco. I mean, he told Kyle Posey that at the Super Bowl this year. So which seems to mean that the Niners can win lots of games, more games than they lose, with the 35th best quarterback in the league. That's interesting. It's very interesting. Something about.